Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Sunday Night Live. Sunday Night Live. But the observant among you would notice that it's not Sunday, it's Tuesday. I have some guests. Why don't you guys jump on and say hi to everyone? It's great to have you with us wherever you're tuning in from. My name's Dan, and I am your host for this evening. I'll be asking questions to this wonderful panel. And what's really exciting about tonight, we'll meet the panel in a moment. What's really exciting tonight is that we could have more members of the panel join at any moment. So who knows who's going to show up? Who knows what's going to happen? But we're really excited to welcome you tonight. And if you're tuning in, why don't you just comment below and let us know where you're tuning in from. As ever, we're super high tech. I've got the feed here. I'm going to try and see what's going on, and we're going to have a chat. Lyndall, Jan, Lauren, turn your cameras on. Let's say hi to one another. Or your audio on even.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Lauren, I know you're wearing some quite fancy earrings tonight. Can you just take us through that?
Yeah, I don't usually wear big earrings with little kids, but I got these earlier this year at the Yarburn Festival. So I thought it's quite fitting to wear them tonight.
Wonderful. And the Yarburn Festival was just a great festival on what felt like, to an English person new to the country, the hottest day of the year down in the city.
Yeah, it felt pretty hot to me too. So.
Jan, you doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I had to put it on mute because Zeus my dog just saw a cat across the road and just went ballistic. So I'm sorry about that. There was just a raucous barking right in my ear. But I'm okay now and the cat's gone, so it's all good.
Wonderful. And Lyndall, welcome.
Yeah.
It's great to have you with us tonight. Lyndall, you lead a team called the Change the Heart Group, and we're going to be hearing a lot about that today and hearing more from different members of that group, and they're probably going to join us at different points. But tonight is a special for Naidoc Week. Can you just tell us what Naidoc Week is, and then we'll get to our acknowledgement of country?
Yeah, sure. Well, Naidoc Week is a week that's celebrated normally in July every year, but it was postponed to this week this year because of COVID and all the uncertainty and restrictions at that time earlier in the year. But Naidoc Week stands for, and I'm going to read it because I always get it wrong because it's not what you expect, or not what I always expect, but it's National Aborigines and Islanders Day Observance Committee. And just noting that we don't, the term Aborigines is largely considered outdated now and derogatory. So we don't use that term anymore, but it's based on a committee that was pulled together many years ago, and people that were fighting for rights of Aboriginal peoples back in the 1920s. So today it's a day that we celebrate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, contribution to society, and we remember history. And one of the original names of the day was actually Day of Mourning. So there is this element of recognizing and remembering history. And for those of you that watched my little mini sermon last week, William Cooper, who I mentioned in that, he was a man that was part of standing up, an Aboriginal man standing up for the rights of Aboriginal people and fighting for justice. And he was part of the first development of Naidoc and where it comes from. And he was a man of God and a man that followed Jesus. So the origins of Naidoc Week are founded in the church, which is pretty amazing too.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lyndall. That's such a helpful framing of what we're about tonight. We want to kind of balance the celebration of these wonderful First Nations people and at the same time just mourn, note and lament the things that have passed and the great difficulties. I just wanted to sort of name up front as well something that I found really helpful from Brooke Prentice, which was around the language we use. And you talked a bit about that, Lyndall, just a moment ago, about using the right words. And I think sometimes we can feel nervous, as I am now. We can feel clunky when we talk about some of these issues and concerned about the words we use. Do you want to speak into that a bit more?
Yeah, I guess I can talk about my experience and my journey, and you know, stuffing up a lot, but being open to being led by the people we're talking about, you know, like led by the voices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, letting us know what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate, because words hold meaning and words hold power and words mean different things for different people. So if we're talking around a particular group of people, we must be led by them in terms of what is appropriate. And the reality is, because we are diverse people and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders are diverse people, different words hold different meanings for different people. So it's not going to look the same for different people. So I think it's about being open and speaking to that and naming that, and whoever we're with at any particular time being led by them in terms of what words are appropriate to use and what words hold meaning for them.
That's really helpful. And so our posture tonight is really to have some difficult conversations, to have some conversations where we celebrate these wonderful cultures, but also just be aware that we will get stuff wrong. And I'm going to invite the panel firstly to gently, if you don't mind, correct me. Like if we say things that, if we use the wrong language or we're unhelpful, but let's make our focus tonight about our hearts and trying to change our own hearts and change the hearts of others tuning in. So if you're tuning in, we've noticed 1 or 2 people have jumped on a live stream now. Why don't you comment below and let us know where you're tuning in from. We always say with Sunday Night Live, which is on Tuesday tonight, just to confuse you, that sharing is caring. So we'd love for you to share this link. Jan's got like about 1 million Facebook friends, so when she shares it, it's just going to go viral. But that's not fair, Jan. So we're not going to make you do it, because we know that technology may not be your friend, but we're going to encourage everyone else. If you could just share the link, we think this is a really important subject, and we think that it could speak to lots of people in new ways. So we'd love to do that. We're going to start with our acknowledgement of country, and I'm going to encourage Lyndall to read the acknowledgement, and then we're going to talk about it in more detail later on. But essentially, this is an acknowledgement of country which was formed by members of this group and a few others in our church. So take it away, Lyndall.
Mm-hmm. So we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather and worship our mighty Creator. We recognise and celebrate the first Australians, who are the oldest surviving continuous culture on this earth and who continue to look after this land that we now know as DY. The language and clan groups of this area are not definitely known due to the devastation of the Aboriginal population following colonisation. We do know, however, that the people of this area have a deep connection to the coastal land, lagoons and ocean. We desire to keep learning about the history and culture of DY. As a faith community, we say sorry for the terrible wrongs committed in the past and that continue to this day. We say sorry for where we did not stand with our Aboriginal sisters and brothers in fighting injustice. We ask for forgiveness. We take the outstretched hand of friendship from the Aboriginal community in pursuing healing and justice and walk together as friends. As we feel the sand under our feet at the beaches, we are reminded to tread softly and gently on this land. We pay our respects to elders past and present and emerging, and acknowledge any Aboriginal people here tuning in today.
Wonderful. So we're going to unpack that a bit more later, and I'd really love to ask a few questions just about different sections in the acknowledgement, but I think that's really great. We have 2 versions, a short version and a longer version, and that was the longer version. And I think the team has done a great job of that. So just to begin, Lyndall, tell us about the team that I keep talking about. What is the Change the Heart team? How did it kind of emerge, and why is it important?
I guess it's just a bunch of people from our community at H3O. I guess we've at first emerged earlier in the year when we sought to be really intentional around January 26th. And how we recognise that day and how we led our community in recognising that day. And from there, I suppose a group of us emerged that wanted to get together and really talk through, learn together, think, pray, and consider how we can continue to intentionally guide and support our community on this journey of friendship with Aboriginal peoples, and also understanding truth, understanding the true history of this country that we now know as Australia, understanding injustice, and then what it means to learn truth and then act as followers of Jesus in pursuing justice. So yeah, we catch up. We've caught up a bit throughout the year. We've got a great little Slack group going, and you know, we had a bit of an intentional week, which was to be Naidoc week, the usual week dates of Naidoc week back in July. If people were around, we had Brooke Prentice come and share with us. We sought to learn together throughout that week, and yeah, we just continue this journey together of learning and acting.
Thanks so much. I think I had the privilege of being part of one of the early Change the Heart groups, and you know, coming from England as a white man, like in many ways, like symbolizing the oppressor, I knew this was a really important like topic to engage with. But I found that a challenge, and I was just really humbled and just really impressed with the way you led that group and that you took us on that journey. And I think that service in January was really special, but it was just the beginning. It was just a starting point for where we are today, and we're nowhere near where we want to be. So we kind of continue on that journey. Jan and Lauren, you're involved in this team. Like, why did you get involved, and why is this important to you? Why don't we start with Jan?
Yeah, I think the thing that I really like the concept of is communal justice seeking. And I think the fact that we were doing something as a community was something I really wanted to be part of. I think in the past, I've been interested in things and trying to do a few things on my own, but could never quite get the momentum. But I think as a community, we're just able to encourage each other, bring more gifts, bring more voices into it. And so, yeah, that was the reason, because I felt that as a community, we were doing this, which was very life-giving, and also seemed to be a better way to go than just, I'm not saying doing individual stuff's not good. I don't mean that at all, but I was really interested in the communal, as I said, communal justice seeking.
Yeah, Jan, I've heard you say that phrase a few times, communal justice seeking, and I like it because it's about doing something together. And like when I think of even like the way Jesus operated, like he sent people out in groups or in twos. He didn't send the disciples out on their own, because these conversations, like standing up for injustice, is a hard thing to do. It's a lonely thing to do, and it can be hugely challenging, hugely costly. And so doing that in partnership as a community is encouraging, but also just gives us that strength to have those difficult conversations. Yeah. So yeah, I really like that idea of communal justice seeking. Lauren, do you want to go?
Yeah. So for me, I guess I joined the group. I just really wanted to take up the opportunity to learn more about the truths of Australia's past and Aboriginal culture, and yeah, just an opportunity to learn more. And so it was a very friendly, supportive group. There were people coming from all different points on the journey. Some people have been on this journey for a long time. Others, like me, maybe only just starting out on this truth learning. And yeah, it didn't matter what point you're at, everyone was welcome. And it was kind of a safe space where you could ask the silly, stupid questions, and there was no judgment, and it was just yeah, just a really safe place to learn alongside others. So that's why I joined.
It's really helpful. And just with that in mind, if you've just joined us, it's Naidoc week today, and this week, sorry, and we're doing a special of Sunday Night Live on Tuesday, and I'm joined by a wonderful panel. And if you've got questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love for you to comment below. I know it's a difficult subject, but what we wanted to do tonight was give the opportunity for you to ask those difficult questions, or the questions that Lauren mentioned just then. So if you've got questions for the panel or comments, why don't you put them below? We'd love to hear from you. With that in mind, I thought we'd do a bit of an exercise and maybe encourage the people at home to join in. Just before we go any further, like we are a church. We believe in the Bible. Like we think it's a pretty good book. And more than that, we believe it's the divine and inspired word of God. We believe in this guy called Jesus who came to the world and turned it upside down and was absolutely passionate about issues of injustice. In fact, he seems to spend more of his time focusing on those things than the things that we worry about today, but we won't go into that too much tonight. But if you were developing a theology, and theology literally means study of God's word. So if you were looking at where we find marks of challenging injustice, particularly around tonight's topic, where would you go? Like, what stories come to mind? What themes emerge from the Bible? And if you're tuning in at home, we'd love for you to hear from you as well. Like when you think about Naidoc Week and celebrating First Nations people, when you think about the injustice and the work that we need to do in partnership with our Aboriginal brothers and sisters, like where would you go to in the Bible? Where do we see God in this space? So why don't you comment below? And I'm going to go to Lyndall first because she studied theology. So we'll start with you, Lyndall. And just to be clear, this is not like not that Lyndall would ever do this. You don't need to
preach.
Just go with it. Yeah, so good. You're so welcome.
Oh, look, lots of parts of the Bible come to mind when I think about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander justice. But I think one in particular, can I read it? Can I read the passage from Matthew? All right, when I think about justice and I think about why justice is important to me, it's because I love Jesus and justice is important to Jesus. And because Jesus was passionate about justice, I'm seeking to be passionate about justice. And in Matthew, Jesus says, "For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger, invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." And I guess, Jesus is talking about the stranger. He is talking about those that are vulnerable, those that are marginalized, those that experience injustice. And particularly what I like about how he talks about these people, he calls them brothers and sisters. There's a sense of family, there's a sense of kinship. And something that I've learned from my Aboriginal friends is this sense of kinship, which is so strong for them and so clear, and a clear understanding of what kinship is, but this strong, this desire. And when my Aboriginal friends talk to me about what they desire from us, and that is friendship, that is kinship, that is relationship. And that's where it starts, in pursuing justice and pursuing reconciliation. And I was actually listening to Larissa Minnicon, who is an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander woman. On Sunday, I was part of a gathering she was in and a listening and a learning circle. And she described kinship, and I wrote it down. Sorry, that's my dog now, Jan. And she described kinship as being, when she says my, it's referring to her, if one of my skin color broke into my house and stole food from my fridge, the crime is not that they broke in, but that the door was locked. And that was just a super powerful and really real kind of practical description of what
Lyndall,
it is.
say that again, because I think there's so much in that.
So she said, if one of my skin color broke into my house and stole food from my fridge, the crime is not that they broke in, but that the door was locked. So if Jesus is calling us to relationship that is as close as family, as close as kin, brothers and sisters, our doors need to be open. And I guess the question is, where are our doors locked? And for me, that comes into play when I'm thinking about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander justice.
Yeah, and we've locked the doors by being complicit, right? Like some people might be sitting there thinking, oh, I don't do that. Like I'm a good person, like I do my bit, you know, la-di-da-di-da. But actually by just being complicit and not speaking up, and it's so hard to do that, and we're going to talk practically about that in a few moments. But like we've done that, I find that so challenging. It's really helpful. We're gonna post that quote in the next couple of days, and probably take some more time to reflect on that. But again, if you're just joining us, this is a Naidoc Week special. We're talking about what the Bible says about issues of injustice. Jan or Lauren, would you like to have a go? It's also fine to pass. Maybe not both of you, but one can. So get in quick and say pass if you don't want to go.
I was just thinking about that, and I've got a couple of passages that come to mind. I think what I like I remember someone praying this for me, and it was, I think, the Jeremiah passage about my plans, something around my plans for you. I know my plans for you to prosper. And for me, I can't think of exact sort of other areas, but that's for everyone. God has plans for them to prosper and to flourish. And so I just want to be able to speak, and like what Linda was saying, we're called to sort of really work for justice in this world, and I want to work so that all people, including my Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters, to flourish and thrive. God wants them to prosper, and where there's a denial for them to prosper because of society's the way society is run, the way governments are run, whatever, I think we need to that's not part of God's plan. So we need to speak into that and do what we can.
That's really great. Thanks, Jan. We'll go straight to Lauren. Lauren, did you want to have a stab?
Just kind of along the lines of what Linda was saying, in Jesus' words, and just the way Jesus lived, where he sought out the marginalized and ate with them and was friends with them, and sought to bring healing to the people that were on the fringes, and his mission was to bring them all in, so include everyone. And I think that's probably just the main thing that's been in my mind on this journey. It's just the message of inclusiveness and bringing healing and restoration.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think that concept of restoration as well, like as you said at the end there, is like throughout the Bible. So if you looked at like the whole picture of Scripture, you got this kind of garden creation moment, whether you believe the world was created in 7 days or it came about through evolution or the Big Bang, like that's fine, but that we believe in some way God was behind this moment of creation. And then right at the end we hear about a city, a garden city, and we kind of live in between those two times, in fact in between the cross and the end times. And so in some ways in that space we play our part in that restoration, that kind of reconciliation of all things. And I think this is a really important part of that, and part of living in that time means that things won't always be perfect. There'll always be brokenness, there'll always be pandemics, there'll always be disease and injustice. But what our role becomes as Christians is to do whatever we can to play our part in trying to restore that. I think for me, like the theology thing of this idea of land in the Old Testament is really interesting, because the whole of the book really, up until the point of Jesus coming to earth in the New Testament, is about land, about landlessness and landedness. So, you know, the Israelites don't have a home, and then they find a home, and God gives them the land. And that was what struck me when these conversations began, as we're talking about this idea of land and this wonderful community that are stewards on behalf of our Almighty Creator, that land has been removed, has been taken from them by systematic like oppression and by colonization. And so like I feel like that theme's all over the Bible. You don't have to look too far to find it. And there's some really interesting themes that emerge. if you're tuning in online, welcome. It's great to have you with us. There's a few people on there now. We'd love for you to comment below, let us know where you tuned in from, and any questions or comments you have for the panel. This week is Naidoc week, where we celebrate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture. And we are joined by a wonderful panel of people, and I think there might be some others joining us in a few moments too. We're going to move forward to a more practical conversation as more people have joined us, because I'd love to hear a bit from Lauren on this, because Lauren, you really challenged me the other day, as you often do. We had a session at our church and we were thinking all about giving a voice to the voiceless. And basically, as a kind of person that's a fixer, as a white man who is not aware but trying to be aware of his bias and privilege that I find myself in, living in one of the most wealthy areas in the whole world, being English, being white, educated, middle class. We were even talking the other day about being a priest, and that in the old days, bishops were chosen not by their kind of academic ability, but actually by their height. So if you were tall, you had a greater chance of being a bishop because you could speak to more people because you had a louder voice. So as someone with a loud voice who's tall and all of those things, I'm really conscious that I want to try and fix what I perceive as a problem. And what I found really helpful the other day was that you challenged that, and that was a really unhelpful way of looking at some of the issues we're speaking about tonight. So do you want to just recap what you said the other day, because I thought it was really helpful?
Yeah, so I don't think there's anything wrong with speaking up and speaking truth and speaking out in a loud voice, but I think the message that has been really spoken to me through work, people that I work with in the Aboriginal Health Network and through this group and through things that I've been learning this year, the message has been that the first step has to be to listen, and to make space to listen to our Aboriginal brothers and sisters, to be guided by them, because more often than not, they already have the answers and the solutions to these problems that we want to fix. And as much as we want to just kind of jump in there and go, oh, here's a quick fix, or here's what we think will work, it might not be the right answer. And so, yeah, I think the first step is just to make space to listen to their stories, listen to their truths and to their experiences, and just be guided by them.
It's really helpful. And this idea that people are already speaking, they're already speaking, but we need to create space to listen. Lyndall, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just thinking, it's very when you think about colonization, part of colonization is a stance that we know best and we are right. And I think that just kind of it's played out with me. It plays out in our subconscious around, and I wonder if that sits behind, sometimes the problem solving that, oh, we know best, I know best, I've got the solution, let's fix it. And I think part of listening is not assuming that we know stuff. It's truly listening, it's truly sitting with and listening. And I'm just conscious of who isn't in our room right now and who isn't speaking, and we're right now kind of sharing and musing ourselves. And I think it's important to recognise that these are our learnings and this is our thinking, but conscious of who is absent in the room. So when I'm probably going to talk about my own relationships with people and things that people have told me, because I think that's important in terms of Aboriginal people. And again, Larissa was speaking on Sunday, and she was talking about sitting and listening, and that we need translators, not interpreters. And what she meant by that was we need people that can sit and listen and learn truth and learn story and tell our stories of injustice, not try and translate or have our version of them, but to speak truth. And that's what it is. And I think that the sitting and listening comes from being in relationship as well. I think that's something that's been really a powerful learning for me. And you know, over the years have been afforded, like just happened to be in spaces where I have been able to be in relationship and have been able to listen and learn story that then I can share, like I'm sharing with you now, rather than assume that I know what's right or assume that I have a solution to anything, because I don't. And if we were only to listen, we would hear that people have their own solutions and people have their own skills and abilities and thoughts and around things. So yeah.
That's really helpful. I wonder if I could just pick up on one thing you said around those relationships. Like if, like practically speaking, someone felt like they wanted to begin a relationship like that. And again, there's a bias in even that question, because it's like, oh, I've decided I'm ready to start a relationship with someone. You know, they may not want to have a relationship with me, but hopefully, again, you get the heart of the question or suggestion. Like, where would we begin if we wanted to humbly try and enter into a deep listening relationship?
I think a posture of learning, you know, learning about where you live, where you work, whose land are you on, who's in the community where you spend most of your time, what's the story of the spaces that you inhabit, and starting there. And I think as you seek out that learning and seek out that truth, people will come into your path, and you will develop relationships as you seek that truth.
I think the encouraging thing as well. Sorry, I've just appeared.
Hi, Alex. We should probably introduce you.
Sorry, I was busy in my Pilates class still that went a bit over. But I think the one thing I found really encouraging from our friend Brooke Prentice was I think we were I was stuck in that quandary of where do I start, and she just very gently offered, well, we're friends, and so that's where we start, and then I introduce you to my friends, and so even as a church, that was such an encouragement. I think that we had a starting place, and as Lyndall said, that it will, in that posture and that place of wanting to learn and wanting to lean in, that would naturally that would grow, and it would naturally kind of happen from that place of friendship. So I was really grateful to Brooke for that.
That's really helpful. The question around giving a voice to the voiceless is a really important theme, and almost like, Lyndall, I know we were having a conversation about this the other day, and you shared some insights about how perhaps someone in a position like myself, or as a white man, or as a privileged person, like, how can we do that? How can we give that voice?
Yeah, I think it's about recognizing where we have privilege and where we have power, and how we use avenues that might be afforded to us to affirm and uphold and allow platform for those that may not always have the first voice, or may not have be invited or have the spaces to have their voice heard. And I think I was sharing a example that Brooke shared with me around a mutual friend of ours, who invited her to speak. He was invited to speak at a conference, a theological conference overseas, and he asked her if she wanted to come along and to write a paper and present a paper together. I think it was around reconciliation, and she described that as him. You know, she would have never been afforded that opportunity. She would never have been invited as a woman, as an Aboriginal woman. However, he had access to that door. He could open that door that she couldn't open. So he was able to hold that door open for her. And yeah, not speak on behalf of her at all, but together, in relationship again, relationship keeps coming up, doesn't it? That together they could do that, and he could enable a platform for her to speak and for her voice to be heard. So I think, that was a really helpful analogy for me around, how can we open that door? How can we hold the door open for somebody else, and affirm and stand with?
That's really helpful. if you've just joined us, we're live on Facebook. You've probably worked that out because you've tuned in, and that's the only place we're live, but it's great to have you with us. My name's Dan. I'm joined by a wonderful panel of Alex, Lauren, Jan and Lyndall, and this week we're thinking all about Naidoc week. If you have questions for our wonderful panel, please comment below. We'd love to hear from you. We realise tonight's more of a sit and watch conversation so far, but we genuinely would love to hear your questions. Don't be shy. Don't worry about the wording or anything like that. We just love to hear from you. So feel free to put some emoji love in or a question for our panel. It'd be great to hear from you. I want to take it a bit further, because what I've noticed recently is I learn a lot from my wife. She's great, and I don't see myself as a good person, but I'd be a terrible person if it wasn't for my wife. And so I'm really grateful for the way she challenges me humbly in relationship. Is a relationship that I can't get out of in that sense, but you know, she does do that. I've been in a few situations recently, even where I've noticed people saying something that I either don't agree with politically, or that's just a bit racist, to be honest, or unhelpful. Like, how do we like speak up in those moments? I've got a few ideas, but I'm not sure I do it that well. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Like, how do we give a voice in those places and speak against injustice? Because I don't think it's satisfactory just to like go to even blank that person or ignore it. I feel like something needs to be said in that moment. Would anyone like to respond to that?
I'll give it a go. I don't think I'm particularly very good at handling these situations, but what I'd like to be able to do in those moments, on the spur of the moment, is rather than confront the person, maybe just draw them out, question them. Maybe, my intention would be to try and get them to think more on maybe the stuff that they've said or stereotypes that they might have bought into. Just question that and try and engage them in further conversation and deeper thought, I guess.
Yeah, so it's about gently questioning the kind of like point of difference in that sense. Yeah. Love to give an example, but it's probably not fair on the person that I spoke to the other day, so we won't do that. Lyndall, you go.
Yeah, there's lots of times I don't do this well, especially if it's out of anger or annoyance. But I think sometimes I'll reflect it back and go, oh, do you mean this? And kind of reflect back something that they may have said. And it kind of puts the ball in, it holds someone accountable for what they say, because sometimes they're jokes, sometimes they're off the cuff comments. And if it's reflected back and it kind of asking them, is this what you meant? It kind of, I find that in a gentle way, as opposed to rah, 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 like that's wrong. I find that can cause people to stop and think and then go, when they try and reframe what they say, realize actually what is being said. But sometimes I'll just say that's really not true and call it out. I think it depends on the context. It depends on the relationship I have with someone. There are particular people in my life that I'm in close relationship with who hold very different views to me, and will kind of have a pretty lively debate, and that's okay, and that's our relationship. So it just depends on the context and the relationship as to how strong I might put a position forward.
Good, Lyndall. It is so much about relationship, isn't it? And you're right, and your permission to kind of I don't know, correct course someone if they really are way off course. And there is a space, isn't there, for speaking truth, and you've talked a lot about that tonight. That's come up as a real theme. And but where you can go on a journey with someone. And I think the only other thing that came to mind for me was that often like in a debate situation, or a kind of, I don't know, if it becomes a situation where people are just on different pages, it's quite hard to move when you're there. But I've just found it so powerful to, like, films in this space are just they just change the conversation, and I guess that would be my, after having had a year of like trying to delve into reading and seeing some films and just having my perspective shifted and just beginning to try and understand more, I've realized the power of, I guess, the power of story and how that kind of changes the conversation. So I guess that would be my other kind of encouragement, just to like offer them something that maybe they wouldn't think to watch, but might be really fascinating for them, whether it was to catch the first Australian series, or watch the film like In My Blood It Runs, or just try a different way in, and perhaps then revisit the conversation after that. I don't know.
I think the idea of sharing your story is really important, isn't it? Or sharing the stories of others, a bit like Lyndall mentioned earlier. That actually, like in apologetics, which I've been involved in a bit, like, which is just sharing your faith, or like sharing the truths of the Christian faith with others. Often you can have debates till you're blue in the face about creation or evolution, and or science disproved God, why would God without suffering, all those things. When you share your story, when you say like, this has actually made a difference to my life because of this, it changes the dynamic. And I think it's the same in this situation, like sharing the journey that you've been on, and just some of the stories of some of the people we're thinking about today, like the really positive stories, but also some of the difficult stories, and allowing them to speak into the situation, so that when an idiot's like with a group of guys or girls at a bar and is just saying something unhelpful, that to respond with a story, a positive story, or a story of the difficulties that a person may have faced, can often change that dynamic. I wonder if, just for the purposes of this conversation, actually, whether it'd be helpful to hear what the moment, just in one or two sentences, was for you where this moved from being a theory or something that you were perhaps like ambiently aware of, to being a real issue that you wanted to play your part in attempting to restore or to reconcile. Does that question make sense? What was the moment that this shifted for you?
I can go if no one else wants to jump in. Yeah, for me, just off the back of what Alex was saying, I think a really pivotal moment for me was at the start of this year when I got to see In My Blood It Runs, a film about this amazing 10-year-old boy, Juan, up in a community just outside of Alice Springs, and just seeing his story and his experiences, and the struggles that he and people just like him go through. That was kind of a really groundbreaking moment for me. And the truths that I learned through that film, they were pretty hard truths, and just the fact that children as young as 10 are incarcerated in this country, and the fact that that is actually legal and it happens, that was kind of really shocking for me. And the fact that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children so greatly impacted by that. I mean, 65% of kids between the ages of 10 to 13 are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. And so, yeah, having these facts and learning these truths absolutely just shocked me and made me want to learn more, because I realised that I knew very little about the issues that our Aboriginal peoples face. And yeah, so that just kind of started the journey off for me and wanting to learn more.
And I think, Lauren, then you watching that film and again, in your wonderful way, just gently encouraging us all to watch it. And I remember a few of us got together on a particular evening and watched that all at the same time, and then had a bit of discussion. That was a key moment for me as well. I've just posted a link to that film below, which is a really, really great film. Maybe just wait till we finish to start watching it, but then you can start watching it straight after tonight. It's really helpful, and it's heavy in a good way, and there's beautiful moments of joy in it as well. The main character in it is just just wonderful and effervescent, and you're just drawn in by this young man like straight away, almost in the first few minutes. And the great thing about that film is that it was made by and in consultation with Aboriginal people. So it's not just Hollywood, making a film about a big issue in that sense. There's a lot of integrity in the filmmaking process, and if you sort of look around a bit, there's some explanation of that as well. Would others like to respond to that? Like, what was the moment for you where some of this stuff shifted?
I think for me it was much the same as Lauren, actually. So Lauren and I went over to Newtown and watched it together, and then kind of stared at each other after for a while and tried to have dinner together and couldn't quite process what we'd seen. Again, it was a bit of a communal justice moment. I was really, much like Jan referred to earlier, I was really glad to even have done that with Lauren, and then carried on that journey with others and watched it together and then talked after, because there was so many layers to it in the story. It had been filmed over a number of years, and so it reflected these. It was such an intimate film and so confronting, and yet, the joy of this beautiful 10-year-old who you couldn't help but love, and so you went on a journey with. And it's just been such a helpful film, really. But probably just before that, I went with Lyndall to the special services held by Common Grace in January with Auntie Jean Phillips, and she doesn't hold back, does she? Does she, Lyndall? She just has such authority as a Australian Aboriginal Christian leader, such authority, and has lived experience and has watched, just spoke about really watching so many of her community just give up hope, and too many of the young ones commit suicide, and too many of the dads in particular end up incarcerated, and just spoke with such authority and such but with such love and grace as well, that almost didn't feel deserved, as she talked about just the gap that needed addressing, and this call to action, that she was calling the church to action, and asking us to take this seriously, and much like Brooke has called us to, I guess, this challenge of not falling asleep. And so really the combination of those two things for me, I think at the beginning of the year, we kind of moved to Australia in September, and then just a few months later, really, that I felt like my kind of my family being out here in Australia, I've kind of been aware of it really as a visitor more than someone who's lived here. But that for me really the start of the year, and then watching the film with Lauren, I think in February, has just it's really made it's been a real turning point for me, I think, wanting to learn more, wanting to lean into that.
Thanks, Alex. I'm struck by how the arts can be hugely powerful in these spaces to move people from one place to another in a subversive and kind of creative way. I remember a great exhibition in Brisbane when we came like a couple of years ago to Australia. Like Alex, like we've only lived here the last year, and just the documentaries that they showed and the way in which they showed them were challenging, difficult to watch, and you couldn't not respond. You couldn't not go away and try and find out more. So again, I think when we're thinking about responding to people, there are other mechanisms and great ways of sharing stuff. Did anyone else want to respond to that? We don't all need to respond.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been a funny journey. I think I've been in a lot of spaces where I've been able to meet and become and build friendships and relationships with Aboriginal people, not necessarily about anything I've done, but it just so happens that I've kind of stumbled into different things, whether it's different ministries, or family wise, my little brother and little sister are really close with a mob up in Yarrabah, and they've kind of become family, enveloped into our family. So they've been at significant family events for us. So they've just, you know, developing friendships there. Or for years I was part of a scripture union mission in Gunnedah up north, and there's a number of Aboriginal people on team and in the community there that I became really good friends with. And then through my work, I work in health and have had colleagues who are Aboriginal, or working with people who are Aboriginal, and looking at it from a health perspective. And we've got terrible, terrible statistics around health for our Aboriginal population, which is far lesser than the rest of the population. And so there's been that practical side of things. So I think I've always been in spaces where I've been able to like learn from people. But it wasn't until I suppose a couple of years ago, amazingly, as Dan mentioned at the beginning, I am studying theology, and part of a church history subject I was doing, they invited Brooke Prentice and Auntie Jean Phillips to come and teach around Australian church history. And that just blew my mind. You know, I'd learnt history outside of the church, but to hear actually where the church were part of that history and part of some terrible parts of history and things that I didn't know, or maybe just knew of but didn't really delve into. That was really confronting. And then, as Alex spoke to, Auntie Jean's kind of call to the church, and her perspective is, you know, true reconciliation won't come to this place until the church leads that process. And the church needs to lead in this space and be a part of healing and restoration. You know, connecting that with some of the theology things we talked about early. This is the heart of God. This is the story. This is God's story. So of course, we as God's people should be right in the thick of that story. And that was a bit of a smack in the face to me. And that was the point where I realized, and not that it was like disconnected from my faith and me as a follower of Jesus, but actually the church's role in this. And I was really challenged by that. And that's been probably a big thing for me in the last couple of years of where is the church in this? Where is the voice of the church in this? Amplifying the voices of our Aboriginal brothers and sisters, and standing beside, especially our Aboriginal Christian leaders. And Auntie Jean Phillips is one of our most senior leaders. And when you hear her story, she's in her 80s. She's been doing ministry her whole life, unpaid. She's been, you know, she was part of getting together with someone else and praying, you know, before January 26th, which turned into these Change the Heart. You know, we didn't explain that, did we, at the beginning, why we're called Change the Heart. We've kind of borrowed it from Common Grace and their services that they run before January 26th. And it is about changing our hearts, because that's where true change and true hearts towards reconciliation is going to happen. So I think it's so, and then being engaged with a bunch of other Aboriginal Christian leaders, that's been really life-changing for me, and I'm so thankful for those voices and those challenges in my life.
Thanks, Lyndall. We've got a few moments left. I wonder whether the question is around what you alluded to in the role of the church. Like we've said practically tonight that we need to use the platforms we have to give a voice to people that don't have a voice, that wouldn't otherwise have that platform. We need to listen well and be led by, and not impose and use our bias or our expectations or our way of doing things. And we've talked about being clear in our challenge, doing it in relationship and sharing stories. But I wonder, like as a church, not just here in DY, but corporately across Australia and actually across the world, like how can we lead in this space?
Yeah, gosh, it's a big question, isn't it? And it's one where I guess we've been going on a journey with in our group. It feels like prayer is a big one. And probably just to echo and repeat some of what's been said already, but prayer and listening to the voices of our Aboriginal brothers and sisters, and taking time to lament and not to rush the process, to lean into the uncomfortable space, and to acknowledge the faults of the church in that space, that the church hasn't been without fault at all. Yeah, gosh, yeah, it's a big question.
I think also to for the church to, you know, be attentive to where the spirit of reconciliation is at work. And I think if we look and we see things, you know, for example, Common Grace, you know, they're doing some amazing work in this area. And I think for the church to come alongside that, to speak out about, you know, to partner with that, you know, and there's probably other, you know, but to be attentive, and then to go where this spirit of reconciliation is happening, and be in it, be active in it.
Thanks, Jan.
Yeah, I think I would echo those thoughts that have already been mentioned, and I guess thinking quite practically around our own church spaces and our own church communities. How are they welcoming to all people? Are they welcoming to those that are on the margins? Are they welcoming to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people? How will they know they're welcome? What are the signs? What is it about what we do, about what we say? And yeah, I guess, and what are we known for? You know, what does the community know us for? And I would love for that to be not what we're against, but what we're for. Who are we standing with? Who are we fighting with and alongside? So yeah, and that does require relationship, and that does require joining with. So there are amazing ministries that are already happening, and Common Grace has already been mentioned, and they provide amazing resources too, and help and support for churches to be able to get alongside and pursue justice alongside people with the lived experience of injustice.
Thank you.
And I might just add a couple words to that. Yeah, just I think the church has such an important role to play in leading a search for the truth, to really press in and be actively seeking out the truth about the church's role in Australian history, and not shying away from uncomfortable truths, and just being supportive of the church members to go on personal journeys to seek out truth, and to provide a platform for our Aboriginal brothers and sisters to speak their truth.
Well, this is a journey we're going to continue on as a church, and Lyndall mentioned Common Grace, which is a great organisation who work in 4 areas, and this is one of them. We're hoping to be able to support them in the coming years, and just continue that relationship, and have Brooke back and all of that. So this isn't the end of the journey, as we've said already. This is just one part of a longer journey we're going on. But I encourage you, if you've watched tonight and you didn't know anything about this, why not share this video with someone? Why not have a conversation with someone in your workplace, in your church, in your community, to one of your neighbours? Because it's through having those conversations, sharing stories, and creating space to deeply listen to one another, that we can shift some of these injustices. I remember something that Brooke said, which was quite profound, in that she said, like, we need voices like yours, because just purely in terms of numbers, there's not many of us. There's not many of us to speak up and say, we need you to speak on our behalf. But that comes from deep listening, from engaging in some of the materials that we've posted in the live stream, and creating a space for others to say what they need to say, but also for people to flourish. So thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We're going to say goodbye to everyone other than then Lyndall. Thanks for coming on, guys. Why don't you just give us a wave, turn your mic on, say goodbye.
See you later. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Jan's got to get off and watch Neighbours. She missed it earlier, so she's got to catch up. I don't know what Alex and Jan and Lauren will be doing. But Lyndall, I'm gonna turn my camera off, and then you're going to finish with a final blessing for us.
Before I do that, I do just want to say, if anyone is interested in joining us and being a part of the Change the Heart group, it is not a closed group, and you are very welcome. And just reach out to one of us, reach out to me, and we'd love for you to join in our conversation and our learnings, and do that in community. So all are welcome. All right, so I'm going to read now an Aboriginal blessing that was written by Brooke Prentice, who we've mentioned a few times. And for those that might not know her, she is an Aboriginal Christian leader, and she's also the CEO of Common Grace, the organisation we've been talking about. So may our footsteps on these ancient lands remind us of creation and connectedness in our search for truth. May the gum tree from its roots to its branches remind us to dig deep and reach high in our action for justice. May the eagle who soars in the sky remind us of the power in our call for love. May the expanse of the lands and seas, of the sky and the stars, remind us of God's timing in our faith in hope. May the Holy Three, Creator Spirit, Lord God, Papa Jesus, remind us of community. So with grace, mercy, and peace, go in truth, justice, love, and hope.